I'm Mike Levy, and today we're going to learn what it's like to own and run a bike shop. Now, there's a pretty good chance that everyone listening to this has been to their local shop, be it to buy a new bike or some gear, have something fixed, maybe just to shoot the shit and hang out. And a handful of you have probably worked in a bike shop for a summer or even for many years. But I bet that not many people listening have owned a bike shop. So, my plan is for this to be a bit of a series where I talk to different shop owners and mechanics to hear about the good times and also the challenges. And it's a perspective that not many riders get. So here we are. Now I'm kicking this off by sitting down with Dan Sommer. He's the owner of Jack's Cycle here in Chilliwack, BC. Jack's has been in business since 1963. That's over 60 years of selling and working on bikes. Dan's only 38, so he hasn't been around for all of that, but he has owned it for the last 6 years. Dan, thanks for chatting with me about owning a bike shop. I think people are going to appreciate learning some things today, some behind-the-scenes things.
You're welcome, Mike.
I appreciate you being open and candid with us. I know that running a shop isn't easy, and an owner's perspective isn't something that we hear often, so they're going to appreciate this. But first, I do have a disclaimer. I've known Dan for 20 years, maybe.
I was 14. I'm 38 now, so do the math.
Yeah. We didn't ride together a ton, but we definitely rode together some. And I thought this would be a good way to start the series because Dan knows me. He won't be surprised by too many of my dumb questions. And we'll kick it off right now. So Dan, first things first. A lot of riders dream about owning a shop, but you actually went out and bought one. Why the hell did you do that?
That's a good question. I thought I'd be able to ride more. No, just kidding.
No, you didn't.
I ride way less now.
Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, it was a dream ever since I started mountain biking at 14. I've always wanted to work in the industry. But I was raised in a fairly large horticulture business and started working there at 12 years old. And with my dad being the owner, I just got to climb the ladder, fairly quick, got paid a decent wage, and it was my comfort zone. And, just being a teenager and doing dumb things, I was scared to leave that.
Dan, I know.
I knew my dad would put up with it a lot more than any standard boss that you work for. So I ended up staying there, and my dad always had hopes of me taking over the business as well. And it's like, I saw potential there.
That would have been probably like maybe the easier thing to do.
It probably would have, because it was right there, like, in my own app, so to speak, right? Like I could have just taken it over just like that. But reality is like, life went on. I got involved with some different careers. Sales being one of them. I started selling toys to children's toy stores.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was some product called Slew Band, which is like basically a Lego knockoff.
Okay.
But like completely compatible with Lego.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed that.
Okay.
But I wasn't the actual importer. I was just the sales rep, and the importer ended up quitting with it. So I went back to the greenhouse. And then I started thinking, and then did sales in the greenhouse as well. Really enjoyed that. And I was like, you know what? I really like sales. I'm going to get involved with real estate. Well, it turns out
you and everybody else,
it's so far, like it's not anything like sales.
No.
I hated like waking up every morning, just dreaded it. You're cold calling, knocking on doors, you're getting yelled at, and it's such like, what do you call it? It's very cutthroat, right? And you got to fake it to make it. And I'm not a good faker.
Dan, that's something we have in common. Not the faking part, but the real estate stuff. So some of my family was in real estate. And my mom was in real estate and grandmas and stuff like that. And like, I saw how they had to work. And like, I had that gave me the perspective in life. I don't want to fucking do that.
Yeah.
No offense to real estate agents, because a lot of people love it and they're good at it, but but then you
did it for 8 months and then quit that. I was like, this is not for me. And I was late 20s at that time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to follow my heart. I've wanted to work in the bike industry since I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
I was, maybe 27, 28 at the time, and still wanted to work in the bike industry. That hadn't changed. And I'm like, you know what? It's probably not going to change for many more years. Like, I'm obsessed about bikes, everything bike related, right? So I went for it. And went to United Bicycle Institute,
UBI.
the UBI,
Classic.
in Ashland, Oregon.
How long was the course?
It was only like a 5-week course.
Okay.
But it's like full time, all day long.
Yeah.
It's fairly advanced.
Yeah.
Had like some cool teachers. Nathan Riddle was one of my teachers.
Quick tangent question.
Yeah.
If a mechanic comes to you
Yeah.
and has been to UBI, I imagine that puts them at the top of your list.
For sure. Like if there's two people, both inexperienced,
Yeah.
and one of them went to UBI and the other one has no credentials whatsoever, for sure, I'd hire the one that went to UBI.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, put it this way, I went to UBI,
Yeah.
thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
Then started working in a bike shop. I was like, I don't know shit.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Did you work in a bike shop before you bought a bike shop?
No. Yes. I worked in a bike shop before I bought it. So what happened is I approached actually the previous owner of Jack Cycle, told him that I wanted to start working in the bike industry, told him I was going to UBI, and wanted to work for him to get hands-on training, and that my goal would be to one day hopefully have my own shop.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, go to UBI. He's like, I'm not looking for a mechanic though. He's like, I need a salesperson.
Yeah.
But go to your course, come back to me afterwards. So that's what I did. And then he hired me within a month.
How long did you work here before you knew you wanted to buy it?
I'd say probably like a year.
Yeah. And then you were convinced this is for you. You wanted to buy a shop.
And then after a couple years of working for him was when I took over. So timing all fell in place because like he knew my dream of one day wanting my own shop.
Yeah.
So after I proved myself for a year, like I started working at a pretty low wage, especially considering I had a family and a kid at the time.
Yeah.
But I was motivated. I was
Sacrifice
to make this work. Yeah. And after about a year, he opened up to me and was like, you know what, Daniel? He's like, I've been thinking about retiring. Like, I either want to retire fully or at least semi-retire. What do you think? So stuff just fell into place. And then about a year after that conversation, I took over. Really cool.
Crazy. Yeah.
Not ever would I have imagined or thought. Like, it was always just a dream of mine as a teenager. But I know like making it a reality can be really, really difficult. There's a lot of things that have to fall in place, financially and just
life is
just life.
Yeah, this is
Dude.
Yeah. And timing and all of that.
And it's like, man, if you're like in a town and there's already a bunch of bike shops there carrying kind of all your main brands, you can't just open up another shop and expect to be able to make it, right? There's that side of it too.
So speaking of that, you bought an existing shop that had been around for a zillion years, existing customer base, brands, people, everybody in town. We're in a town of 80, 90,000 people now.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about it, and that's obviously a big plus.
For sure.
If you could go back, would you have started a shop from scratch, or would you still buy an existing store?
Now knowing I would still buy an existing store. At the time, I had a bit of an ego and I wanted to start fresh, but I'm so glad I did.
And say, it would have been a hell of a lot more challenging.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Even just, I think, to open accounts with like distributors and bike brands is something that's like, I mean, that's complicated and you got to prove to them. It's not easy to just start a bike shop from scratch.
Exactly.
So, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of booking orders, staffing challenges, and all that. But just as an overarching feeling, Dan, has it been more difficult or stressful than you expected? Or do you wish you did it sooner and maybe it hasn't been as hard as you expected?
Maybe no, I don't wish I would have done it sooner because I wouldn't have been ready. Is it stressful? Yeah, for sure. And it's probably more stressful than I imagined. I thought, working in the bike industry and having my own shop, I'd be able to do the things that I love to do, which is sales.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Interaction with people, right?
Yeah. It's like being the business owner, you don't actually get to do a lot of that. You have to do the things that have to be done.
Yeah.
For the thought and shit. Like booking orders.
Yeah.
And that's like, to me, is the most stressful thing ever.
Okay.
Because I love looking at new products.
Yeah.
But I hate putting in the numbers
Yeah.
and then having to commit, like submit those orders and commit to it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't have a crystal ball and we're planning a year in advance.
Yeah.
I mean, during the COVID years, some suppliers made us plan like almost 2 years in advance.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we haven't even gotten.
Okay. Before we get too deep into this,
Yeah.
can you explain to people what a booking order is? Just use one brand as an example, no names or anything, but just what a booking order is, and we're going to talk like general numbers and kind of get into some business stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So basically a year ahead of time. So with most brands, you're looking at late summer to early fall is when you do your booking order for the following year. So like most of my booking orders for 2025 are already long done. They're submitted. Basically what you're doing is you're ordering product ahead of time, which you then have to commit to.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the perks is that if you commit to a certain volume, they'll give you really small volume discount. And, typically they give you terms. So like you don't have to pay for product right away. So it varies from supplier to supplier. Some suppliers, it could only be 30 days if it's a smaller supplier, right? And then some of the larger ones will offer like spring terms where you have to pay in, say, a third of it in April, the other third in May, and the last third in June, for example.
So there's a couple things that immediately come to mind here. The first is that in terms obviously makes sense, and the booking order allows the brands to get your money so they could pay for the stuff, before you get it, so they can pay for it to have it being made. They're not out of pocket. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Yeah.
But we can't see the future,
Exactly.
and I mean, I worked at a bike shop, the one across town here, for more than a decade. And, there were times when we would make a booking order and then, that next year it was a cold, wet spring. Tell me, that's scary, and for some perspective too, a small bike shop, like a booking order could be 6 figures, right?
Yeah.
I or more, so like this is a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like it's, it's 6 figures with several different brands, so it adds up. Like you're, like sometimes you're committing to, when you take all your bike brands together plus parts and accessories, it could be easy $1 million worth of inventory that you're having to commit to. And when you're doing these booking orders, like you don't even know how that current year, like how much product you've sold through. And then you have no idea what next year's is going to be like, but yet you have to commit to a certain number.
That sounds scary.
It's super scary. For me, is the most stressful thing of running this business.
I know, obviously there's some forecasting and like, you could look at financial stuff that's happening and you could take a guess, but in my experience, the outdoor industry, recreational stuff, it's a very different thing. Like thankfully, people will give up buying a large screen TV, but they might still come to your bike shop to buy like a new bike for their kid,
Yeah.
So that's the one good thing. But on the other hand, geez, like I was saying, you have a cold, wet spring and like you don't sell a whole bunch of bikes. You're stuck with a ton of bikes.
Yeah.
Do brands allow you to adjust booking orders or adjust terms ever?
Terms, no. They are what they are. Sometimes you can make adjustments to your booking order if you let them know ahead of time. Like they give you like a certain window.
Yeah.
Where you can make adjustments or maybe even cancellations. But if you're outside of that window, you get penalties.
Okay. And I mean, I guess it is in their best interest too to make it as easy as possible for the bike shop, for the business that they're doing.
Sure, because at the end of the day, the brands want you to succeed too, because if you succeed, then they succeed. And I think a lot of times, like doing the pre-bookings, it just helps them have a rough estimate of how much product they need to bring.
Which they also need, 100%.
Yeah, and they need to pay ahead of time. Most cases, to factories, right?
You mentioned something interesting in passing there. You said like components and accessories, and one thing that people might not realize is some of these brands, these bike brands, if you want to sell Company X's bikes, you also have to buy Company X's helmets and shoes and, jerseys or something like that, which there's upsides to that. What are the upsides, Dan?
Yeah, so I mean, overall, with the brands that we deal with, they've been fairly low pressure.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of stuff, and I think it's mainly coming from the US,
Yeah.
where brands put a lot of pressure on the dealers. And, if you're, say, a dealer of brand A, they make you commit to a certain number, or you can't even be a dealer. And also, you have to have, say, like 50% of the store has to be their product.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't do well with pressure, and I
Yeah.
salespeople know right ahead of time, like, you pressure me into anything, we're done. That's not how I work. I run my business my way. It's my money at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah.
if you're pressuring me into getting, X amount of product, and if I, come to the time where I need to pay for my bills, I can't pay for them because you just now pressured me into more product than I can sell. Are
Yeah.
you going to help me pay for it? Right. So, and most salespeople out here have been very understanding of that.
Yeah.
But there is the other side to it too. If you do commit to a certain number, and also say, like, carry a certain number of their parts and accessories, they give you way better volume discount.
There you go.
So that's the other side of it.
And a lot of times too, this stuff is priced pretty competitively from a buying point of view. And then a lot of people that are buying new bikes, they also want the new gear that goes along with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of massive booking orders, you got a bit of storage space back here, but storage is a challenge for any bike shop I think I've ever been to, isn't it? Like, because these bikes, when a big semi truck pulls up, they might be dropping off how many boxes?
Oh, like sometimes it's several pallets worth at once, right? And that's not even the full order. So yeah, storage is huge. And the problem for us, retail zoning is really, really expensive in Chilliwack. So it's tough. Like, you want to use most of your space for your business, for retail, not for storage. So what we did when I took over the shop in 2018, we completely renovated the store for numerous different reasons. One of the reasons was I wanted to make it more personal. I wanted to turn it into my shop. But the main reason was we wanted to have more usable space.
Yeah.
And like, the space above you, you're still paying for it. So you may as well make use of it.
Yeah.
So we built, different racking systems in our store so we could display more product. We basically boarded up the windows, and we put, like, whatever nice window graphics on the outside, just so we could put slot wall on the inside, again, to be able to hang more product up, to have more product and display. And then in the back space, in our repair section, we built mezzanines.
Mhm.
And then in our storage space, we built more mezzanines. And then I even have storage outside of that as well that I need to use. Yeah.
I remember that being a very big challenge.
Yeah.
Boxes take up a lot of room.
Yeah. And it sucks because, like, I feel like in one way, distributors are set up as basically big storage warehouses, and they're paying a lot less for their storage space in relation to what we are for a retail space. So I wish it would be, they could store a product until we need it, but that's not always the case. Like, you don't get to pick,
Exactly. So how often are you calling a warehouse or distributor and getting just one bike at a time?
Not often.
Really? 'Cause that's way different than my experience. 15 years ago, we would often, I think partly because we had less storage space, maybe,
Yeah.
and then we would have to pay shipping on that bike, and it makes it more expensive.
Yeah.
But so not often.
Well, during the peak season, like, we definitely do it because there's customers that come in, and then, the bike that you have, the red one, they want the blue one.
Yeah, or the size or whatever.
Or this, whatever, right? And we're about making the customer happy. So yes, we're going to order that bike for them, and we'll order a one-off bike. So yeah, it does happen, but for the most part, in most cases, like, you kind of base your sales off of your booking stuff. And then in rare cases that you need something else, that's when you do special orders.
COVID times, Dan.
Let's not even talk about
We got to talk about it, Doc.
both good and bad.
How was it for your shop?
So when COVID first hit, it was weird. because everybody got scared.
Yep.
And we had bad weather and our sales just dropped. And we're like, oh crap.
Were you very nervous, very scared?
Yeah, because I did not of COVID itself, but
No.
business wise.
Yeah, business. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we didn't know. Like, we didn't know what was going to go on. Like, right. So, and it was a couple weeks where business was down a lot. And then all of a sudden, everybody and their uncle came in and wanted to buy.
Was it like one day it wasn't and one day it was on?
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden it just changed, but the weather did change as well. So it was like a combination of the weather changing. I think it was like spring, right? So we're headed into, a good climate.
Was it your best spring ever?
It was. Yeah, it was. But there was a lot of downsides to it as well. So the good thing is we sold everything that we got. That's the bad thing.
Check.
The bad thing is we couldn't get any more product because the industry couldn't keep up with demand. So then there was like huge product shortages, huge delays.
But just, I'm curious. I didn't spend a lot of time going to bike shops during that time. So let's just say I come into the bike shop here. I need a new derailleur of some kind. Like, was there a chance back then that the distributor didn't have it? Is it that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no chains, no tires.
Yeah. We were literally turning people around because we couldn't fix their flat tire because we didn't have tubes and couldn't get tubes from anywhere.
How frustrating was that?
It's super frustrating. Nobody wants to turn down a sale, right? But
yeah,
if you don't have the product and you can't get it, like you don't have another choice.
So you didn't have any bikes to sell at some point, or very few?
Yeah. There was 2 summers where almost our whole store was empty. We had like 2 bikes left, which were both like $10,000 plus bikes.
Probably not good.
No. And that's in your peak season when you need and want bikes.
It's the opposite of the scary booking orders that we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
So then what happened after that? Well, how did you get through it, first off?
Well, because we sold almost everything we had, we just sold it earlier. So like the money was there to carry us through the times when we didn't have product. It was just really frustrating. We couldn't get more. And, it got so bad. Like, I remember doing a trip to Canadian Tire and bought tubes at full price from Canadian Tire just so we could help some of our customers out. I'm not
losing money.
Literally losing money, but just for repairs that came in that were like our customers and say they had a flat, we'd fix it for them, but we wouldn't resell these tubes to customers that were just looking for a tube.
Yeah.
It was for repairs only.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then what changed?
Well, that's when pre-bookings got crazy. There were certain suppliers where we had to order. It was at least 18 months ahead of time. It might have even been close to 2 years ahead of time, because they were trying to get in a good spot as far as getting products. So they wanted orders coming in early. But what really screwed us over is that the pre-order from that first year hadn't even come in yet. Plus, we had no idea what the next year was going to be like. And then we had to order product for the following year already, 2 years in advance. That really screwed things over, because what ended up happening within those, whatever it was, 18 months, is that, COVID didn't disappear, but worldwide restrictions were lifted. So people got back into their normal lifestyles. People went back to work, kids went back to school, people got back into traveling. And all these people that overspent during the COVID years when they're stuck at home, now we're sitting on all these toys that they couldn't use anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Plus they were, going back to their normal lifestyles. So demand in the bike industry went back down. I'd say like maybe even worse than the pre-COVID years.
Was this timed perfectly for when that 18-month-old booking order started?
And so when it was like literally like all that stuff, like the 2 years worth of product that we ordered, all came in like within weeks before this happened. And then the market crashed, so to speak. And then all of a sudden we're sitting on 2 years worth of inventory that we can't sell. And we're like, oh shit, what do we do now? So the last couple of years have been really tough. It's been a major discount market, and it's still really, really tough to sell product Like we've had some bikes like, and it does depend on the discipline. There's some disciplines that are a lot worse than others. And we've had some bikes listed for anywhere from 40 to 60% off. And then it still takes almost a year to sell. Like it's crazy.
Did any of the brands offer any flexibility with any of the terms with this stuff? Be like, obviously every bike shop is struggling during this stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. So this is kind of when the brands really, showed their true colors. With some brands, we didn't get anything.
Yeah.
And with those brands, we ended up quitting.
You
Because
fired them.
basically,
Yeah.
yes.
Good.
Yeah. Gave them the middle finger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had, we got stuff pushed on us, right? And then we had to do orders, like so far in advance. And then like they kept, when the stuff was there, like, I tried to be that loyal dealer and kept taking product instead of when other dealers were canceling. And then all of a sudden, within like a 2-month window, this product went on for major discounts. And here in the meantime, I paid full price for the product. And then all these other dealers that canceled, got no, what do you call that? They got no cancellation penalties and were able to repurchase at the lower wholesale price. And then me, for being a loyal dealer, basically got penalized and then had to take the hit on the margin difference because we paid full price on this product, right? Paid a premium for it during COVID. And then all of a sudden, manufacturers are advertising their product for 20, 30, 40% off. And just like they want us to honor the MSRP pricing policies, they also want us to honor the sale prices. And in a way we have to, because it's all advertised online, right? So we had to take that hit. So there were some brands that, stepped in and offered financial support on their own. And then there was other brands where I had to fight for it. And then other brands that didn't offer it. But in the end, we still, like, we never got our margin difference. Like we took a hit, like a huge hit.
Speaking of margins, let's talk a bit about that. Obviously I don't expect you to say exact numbers. But I mean, you need to make a margin to
I need to eat.
Yeah, this is how it works, But one thing that people don't realize is I get the impression sometimes that some people think that like you get a bike in or you get a bunch of bikes in and you basically like just double the price. Keystone is the term.
I wish I'd be driving a Porsche if that was the case.
That would be sweet.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a range of margins on complete bikes, but just like roughly how many points are we talking?
On high-end stuff, you'd be lucky to get half of that.
Okay, so like 20, 30.
Depending on the brand and the product, it could be anywhere from 20 to 30 on average.
Yeah. Interesting. High-end sales, in my experience, I loved building those, the guy would come in and, he'd want the $10,000 mountain bike and I would just be so pumped. I remember I would talk to him for like 7 hours on the shop floor. So happy. And like, then it would take me 4 hours to get this bike built and just perfect. And, the whole time my boss is like looking at me, like,
time is money.
Yeah. And you're actually making less margin on high-end bikes because they take longer to build and longer.
Yeah. So you're making less margin. Now, dollar-wise, sure, you'd be making more on that bike than you would say like an $800 recreational bike. But the thing, like you said, what you got to factor in is you don't move as many of them. So it's sitting on your sales floor for longer, right? Whereas like your recreational stuff is quicker turnover. And you're paying for that storage space. So it's costing, the longer a product stays on your floor and your shelf, it's costing you money. And then the other side, the other thing too, is when, you're talking to a customer, it typically takes way more time to sell a high-end product for obvious reasons. I mean, these people are spending big money. They want to make sure they're getting the right product, but it usually comes with 101 questions.
As it should. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you need to take that time to answer the question. And then there's your build. Like a lot of these bikes come shipped as frame only. and all your parts are thrown in a box and you got to put it together yourself. So like instead of a 45-minute bike build, it's now, a 4-hour bike build.
A very different customer. I always found that to be such an interesting comparison. We had the roadies and the mountain bikers that would come in and they like the Pinarellos and the fancy things, but our location downtown in that shop, a huge customer base of ours were people that can't drive. Bikes are, how people get around that can't drive, so a lot of my time was spent dealing with people who weren't going to buy a bike at all, or if they were going to buy a bike, it was, a $600 hybrid bike. And to be honest, we love that.
Yeah.
And I bet you do too. It's a 10-minute build and a 10-minute sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big plus, but it is interesting to balance that, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because the downside of that is you have to move more volume to make the same numbers, which means you need more bikes, which means you need more storage space.
Person who buys that expensive bike is usually, very often, they're a customer for years in my experience. Would you say that's true? Like they might buy 2 more bikes or some nice gear?
I'd say it's about 50-50.
Yeah.
So some of the customers are super loyal and they'll stick with you, regardless of what brands you sell. But I feel like it's starting to change, especially with like the high-end market, because there's so much information online. A lot of these people are doing the research ahead of time. I mean, there's so many reviews online about these bikes.
Yeah.
So people are more, I'd say, like brand loyal now. So, and that will change because like, 1 year there'll be a certain brand that gets reviewed awesome by every single, social media outlet out there. And then like all of a sudden 2 years later, it's brand B that gets reviewed really great. So this person's going from one brand and then they want a new bike and then they want the other brand. So they're just going to the closest shop that has the brand of bike that they want.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that too.
Question for you, small tangent. You sell specialized bikes?
Yeah.
So let's say a review went up on, I don't know what website, maybe pinkbike.com. I think that's the address. If a review, a very positive review went up of a new Stumpy, would you see a difference in sales from a bike review? Do you notice that?
It helps for sure. And it's also a good like sales tactic for us because it gives a customer a non-biased point of view, right? So if there's a good review out there, like the Ibis Ripmo, for example, got reviewed really well across numerous different channels. And, we're huge Ibis fans here. I am personally. And for me to recommend a bike to a customer is great. But at the end of the day, customer is going to be like, well, this guy's biased. He sells Ibis. So obviously, right? So we can be like, well, here, don't just take it from me. Just Google Ibis Ripmo reviews. Yeah. There's like 10 different ones that come up. Read them for yourself, right? So for us, it's also helpful for us.
Okay. Have you ever considered selling used bikes?
We did in the past. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, okay.
We quit. Yeah.
Tell me a nightmare story. Give me an example.
Well, for one, space. So if you're selling used bikes, you need extra space. So, and we don't have extra space. So we were storing these bikes inside in the paths. And then every morning we'd have to line them up outside, lock them up. Every evening we'd have to unlock them, bring them back inside. And then with customers too, like it took twice as long to sell a used bike compared to a new bike because they'd have 100 questions like, oh, who were the previous owners? How many owners were there? What year is this bike? How used is it?
Yeah.
How much do I need to spend on repairs to get it running like new again? It's, like so many different questions. And then at the end of the sale, say if something happened to the bike, they'd come back here and expect warranty. And like, even though we'd explain to the customer, like, hey, it's not our bike. This is a commission, or it's not a, what do you call that? Not commission. Consignment-based sale.
Yeah.
So it's not really our product. And because it's a used product, there's no warranty because you're now the second or third or fourth owner.
No.
But people tend to forget that. And then when they have the issue, they come back to you and go, and then, your shop is all of a sudden in a bad...
Associated.
Because we're associated with it. Right.
Yeah, good point. You don't have a huge shop floor, but you got a lot of bikes out there. You got all these racks and stuff. How percentage-wise... mountain bikes you sell versus town bikes, like normal, like cyclist bikes, hybrids, things like that?
Ooh, I don't know the exact numbers,
Roughly speaking.
but I know like e-bikes, it's our biggest segment of the shop now. Units wise, we still move more analog bikes than e-bikes
Overall.
but dollar wise, e-bikes is our biggest category. Yeah, like
Wow. That's a big change. So 6 years when you bought the shop,
yeah.
how big was that e-bike category?
So when I took over, there was 2 e-bikes on the floor. And I had told the previous owner, I said, you need to do more e-bikes. It's where the market's headed. And we need to get ready for that. Like, we need to be ahead of everyone else. And he's like, I'm too old. I don't want to deal with it. It's too much stress for me.
Yeah.
When you take
Those are
over,
valid points.
to be honest, you could do that. So that's what I did. When I took over, I took that e-bike market full on. And I think the first year we went from 2 e-bikes to having, I think was like 8 e-bikes on the floor with extra sizes and colors in the back. So, maybe a total of 15 or 20 e-bikes that first year. And, I think it was last year we moved 100 e-bikes.
Holy shit balls.
So yeah, it grew pretty quick in a very short period.
There's going to be people from shops listening that sell way more than that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But, we're in a relatively small town.
Yeah.
This is a small shop. And
Small towns, shop.
yeah, and it's not a super, athletic town or whatever, active town. So, but on the other hand, that's probably why e-bikes, one of the reasons why you sell so many e-bikes. So, of that number, how many of those, roughly speaking, percentage-wise, are just like ride around town bikes, and how many are like people are going mountain biking on this e-bike?
So out here, it's mostly comfort e-bikes. I'd say probably 90% of what we sell are all comfort e-bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So we call them comfort e-bikes. It's essentially a hybrid that offers an upright riding position.
Let's just also mention that Chilliwack has a very high percentage of Dutch people.
Yes, and baby, yeah,
Which we
for
like.
sure. Yeah. Most of them have money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then I'd say the other 5% is for commuters.
Okay.
And then the other 5% is for EMTB.
That's it.
Yeah, Chilliwack's a really weird town. Anytime I'm in the city or like sea to sky area, I'm blown away with how many commuters are out there. But here's the thing, like Chilliwack's infrastructure is not set up for cycling. So there's that side of it. And people just drivers aren't very bike aware either. Like it's scary riding a bike on the road. Like I won't do it. And then the other thing with like EMTB, I don't know what it is, but I feel like we have too many diehards here that have this like weird perception that, e-bikes are, for cheaters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of these people that have said that have never been on an e-bike.
Mm-hmm.
But
why are you looking at me like that right now, Dan?
Cheater. Are you kidding? And it's like you go to sea to sky, and every time I ride there, it's probably 40% of people riding there on e-bikes.
S-Works e-bike.
Yeah.
Pitching.
It's such a different market.
Yeah.
But I think it will come. It's just Chilliwack still got that it feels like a city to me, but it's still got that like small town farmer.
100%. I agree.
And it's,
We're years behind.
We're years behind compared to, the bigger cities like Vancouver.
Which are years behind America.
And Vancouver's years behind the US, and the US is years behind Europe as far as e-bikes are concerned.
Interesting.
Like Europe was first when it came to e-bikes. Like 10 years ago, they were already huge.
So my next question is probably moot, but what I wanted to ask was, how many of those people that come and buy an e-mountain bike later come back to buy a regular mountain bike?
I'd say like none.
Rough estimate, 0.
Yeah, pretty much anybody that goes e-bike, there's no going back. I'm kind of one of the weird people. I have both. I have a normal bike and an e-bike, and I actually enjoy my normal bike more than I do my e-bike. But most people, once they have an e-bike, they don't even ride their normal bike anymore.
Do you have people that come and buy an e-mountain bike and then come back to buy another e-mountain bike? Or maybe either they're not staying in the sport, or maybe that one just works fine for a while?
Yeah, so most of the time it's like couples that are coming in, or it's like, just one person. And a lot of times like when there's an e-bike sale, it's typically two bikes because they'll both get one.
That's nice.
And if not, it's usually just the wife that wants one because the guy is like, oh, I don't need an e-bike and I'm still fit enough, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is like when you're on a normal bike, you can't ride with people on e-bikes. Like it's just not there's no match. Yeah. So usually they come back like a month or two later and go, oh, I need an e-bike.
Yeah. How are you handling mechanical issues with these e-bikes? Like you're a small shop, someone buys a $15,000 e-bike and the motor conks out, or maybe the battery doesn't hold a charge. What are you doing?
Yeah, there's more issues for sure because you have all the regular issues of a standard bike.
Maybe now because they're going faster.
Yeah, they wear and tear more for sure. You're going through drivetrain quicker, you're going through brake pads quicker, you're going through tires quicker. So there's all that. And then there's the issues associated with the battery, the motor, and the computer systems.
That's all send away stuff for you, isn't it? Just fix it.
Yeah, they don't even want us to. So most cases it's warranty. And you get like a new battery as a replacement, or
you have to dispose of the stuff, or do you send it back?
No, so the batteries go to a program called Call to Recycle.
You don't just throw them in the lake?
Yeah.
Jokes, everybody, jokes. Okay, so there is a system though for keeping people rolling, and it has been working.
Yeah, for sure.
This is probably a dumb question. I don't know. Are you nervous at all about having like 80 giant e-bike batteries hanging out in your store overnight?
So I know there's a lot of horror stories on the news about batteries catching on fire. The reality is it's every single news article that I've seen or read, it's always associated with some Chinese knockoff e-bike.
Yeah.
It's never like a bike shop branded e-bike that's catching on fire.
Or like some hobo and he's drilled a hole in it.
Exactly. Trying to make his e-bike faster.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not concerned at all.
Not at all
About that stuff.
No.
Okay. One of the more challenging things that I remember from my time at the shop was staffing. We were a shop that was, probably a lot like you. Like we would get super busy in the summer, like insane busy.
Yeah.
For 3-4 months or whatever it is. But the other times of the year could be pretty dead quiet. So it was hard to have somebody, first off, for long enough. It felt like every spring, because we couldn't keep people year round, basically. So every spring or every other spring, we had to train up a new mechanic. Do you find that challenging? Do you deal with that?
Yeah, staffing is the biggest challenge. So for me, booking orders is the biggest stress. Staffing is the biggest challenge, for sure.
Mechanics or sales?
Both. Yeah, mechanics more so than sales, because I feel like you have to have a lot more experience as a mechanic.
Interesting. So I was actually going to ask you, I was going to say, it's easy to teach somebody how to do, basic repairs that are required on like a hybrid bike.
Yeah.
I've always found it harder to find somebody that can talk to a customer properly.
Yeah, because quite often your good mechanic doesn't have good communication or like social skills.
Yeah.
And good salespeople that have the social skills typically are not good mechanics.
Exactly.
So that's why at our shop, we kind of have dedicated mechanics that stick to the back. And then we have dedicated salespeople that stick to the...
They keep segregated.
Yeah,
exactly. And do you have multiple staff year round, or do you have returnee staff?
Yeah, so we have staff year round. So it's really difficult because we're a seasonal business. So it's like you have two extremes. Like spring and summer, you're super busy. Mm-hmm. Winter, you're dead slow. In an ideal world, you'd have an experienced person that's going to university. And then in between semesters, which is typically April till August, you have the university student full time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nearly impossible to find those kind of people. So what we do is currently we have 4 staff, and we have them year round. So it kind of sucks because right now we actually have too many staff for, you know, for the little work that we have. But in summertime, we're way too lean on staff. So, the others, like, it's just how we do it. Now, another way of doing it is having less staff for the winter and then just hiring part-timers for the spring and summer. The problem with that is a lot of times when you lay people off for the winter, you don't get them back that next spring or summer, which means you have to hire a new person. You have to go through all the retraining.
You've invested that time into those people.
A huge time. And like, it takes, honestly, like for a salesperson or like a mechanic to get to like a good base level, you know, foundation, it's 2 years of full-time work. Like, it's a lot of in-store practice and training. Yeah. I wish there was more schooling. I wish it was more like Europe where there's actual like university courses where it's like a 2-year apprenticeship program. Because I feel like,
You know what a lot of people say though is that mechanics don't get paid enough. They're not respected enough. And in the past, I mean, I was compensated, I thought, perfectly fine for the amount of work that I was doing. You know, I thought I was paid well enough.
sounds like you had way too much fun.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. It was a very good time. But what's your take on pay? Like, I don't need to know how much you're paying these guys, but is that a factor for keeping people around, I imagine?
Yeah, so we pay higher than normal for industry standards.
Okay.
Just because, for one, like, I want staff to like be happy, for one, and with, you know, the inflation and everything, like it's hard to get by.
Yeah.
And I want staff to be able to get by. And then the other reason too is you almost need to, otherwise they won't stick around. It's hard enough, you know, finding someone that's willing to work these days, never mind finding someone with experience. So if you can find someone with experience, pay them well, because like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's a needle in a haystack.
The dream is always to find the guy or the girl who wants to be the career bike mechanic.
Yeah.
That's the dream. Like somebody you could trust with your shop when you leave for a week on holiday.
Yeah.
You know, which is super hard to find.
Did you say holidays? I haven't had a week of holidays yet.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Jeez, eh? Have you ever had to fire anybody?
No. Everyone's kind of quit on their own terms. And I don't think it's because I've been a shitty boss. No, it's just they found, you know, other careers, and unfortunately careers that paid way better. And as a bike shop, like, we deal with lower margins. So we can't, you know, we pay higher than industry standards, but at the same time, we can't compete against like normal trades jobs, even though we should, even though a full-time mechanic with experience should be getting the same as a plumber or an electrician.
Yeah.
The reality is we don't make enough money in our industry to be able to pay those people those kind of wages. So usually, you know, that's what happens. Like, you know, someone that's good will use their, you know, natural skill set in a different field that's, you know, similar, and get paid a much higher wage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought that the bike mechanics, like, when I was a mechanic, I mean, I was a mechanic for a long time, and like, I never felt like whenever I told people what I did, it wasn't like, you know, I was a grown ass adult, like, I'm a bike mechanic. Like, it doesn't have that, like, yeah, I'm a welder.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'll come put your roof on or fix your plumbing or like frame your house. It's, you know, it doesn't have the same thing, does it?
It's almost like there's a stigma associated with it. Like,
Very
oh,
much
you
so.
just work in a bike shop?
Like 15?
Yeah.
I fucking wish I was 15.
Yeah. Most people don't understand what it takes to actually work in a bike shop. It's a lot harder than you think. It's not like, you know, you can just walk into, like, anybody can walk into McDonald's and Tim Hortons.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying those aren't tough jobs. In fact, like, that's where most people should start, because it's super high paced. There's a lot of pressure, and you learn how to work. It's just with bike shops, there's so much knowledge that you need to know.
Yeah, it's a pretty like wide range of things. So let's pretend for a moment that I'm a complete stranger and I walk into your bike shop and I'm looking for work. What's a couple pieces of advice that you would give me? somebody listening that wants to work in a bike shop?
Yeah. So for one, obviously be into cycling yourself. Like you need to be passionate about bikes. You don't have to. Like we've had other employees that, were not interested in cycling at all that actually turned out to be very good employees. But being passionate about cycling and doing it yourself, I think you progress at a much quicker rate.
Sure.
So there's that. The other thing is be a loyal customer of where you want to work, right? Don't shop at whatever business A and apply a business B. Like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Because we need to know, like, as like with staff, like, hey, you believe in us.
Yeah. Do you support us?
Do you support us?
Yeah.
Right. Because if you believe in us and support us, then you also have the ability to sell us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that, and just having a good work ethic, really, and then wanting to learn.
Yeah. I always found it like this interesting balance of, like, I had a great boss, and he, if there was no work to do, it's not like I had to sweep a floor that I already swept. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I could put my own bike on the rack, and like it is a balance of like being a normal human and also like expecting the person to work their ass off when they have to work their ass off.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like in spring and summer, staff probably get overworked a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas winter, it's really slow. And then, if you want to build up your own bike during shop hours, I'm all for it. Because at the end of the day, that's going to give you more experience.
Yeah.
It's practice, right? It's hands-on on practice. So it's going to help the business in the end. And just like finding stuff to do. Like sometimes all it takes is organizing or reorganizing, like putting product on display a different way.
There's always something to do. Pump those tires out there,
Exactly. There's always something to do. Or if there's absolutely nothing to do, you can go online and watch all these how-to tutorials or product tutorials. Like there's always stuff you could do to become a better sales rep for that next spring or summer, or a better mechanic. Like say if you're a mechanic and you don't feel very comfortable pulling a fork apart, well, grab a bike from the floor and pull that fork apart 10 times. Do what it takes to get comfortable.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Speaking of taking forks apart, things have changed since I was a mechanic. I remember people coming in and, it was time for a fork service, or it was, time for something or other, and we'd drop the lowers and we'd pull the thing apart, pull the damper apart, and like do the things we need. I remember bleeding dampers, like doing all this stuff. It's not like...
Do you hand bleed the dampers?
They were Marzocchi forks, so you don't really bleed anything, but, but nowadays it's not really like that, is it? Like, are you sending a lot of stuff away now?
So we do lower services in-house.
Okay.
From like all your main brands. So like think like Fox, RockShox. And then like your basic can services for rear shocks.
Yeah.
But like for your full overhauls, we're sending those away.
Yeah.
It's a lot more technical. So stuff's a lot more complicated. And the biggest issue is for almost everything you need special tooling.
Yeah.
And that tooling changes after a certain model year. So say they have, like with Fox, I believe the model years essentially stayed the same from 21 to 23, right? That will require certain tooling. But then when they go to a new model, quite often that will require new tooling.
So sometimes it's hard to keep up.
So it's hard to keep up. And if you're in a small town, you need to do a lot of fork services to pay for that tooling to make it worthwhile, right?
Also, we get back to the staffing problem too. You need to have a staff member that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah,
it's going to take that fork apart, because if it goes back to OGC or whoever to service the thing, there's a warranty on it, when you get it back.
Yeah.
So it's kind of on them. So yeah. Interesting. Okay. You said you've never had to fire anybody. Have you ever had to fire a customer?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I do remember, a couple times every year we get unruly customers in, and it was always a challenge.
Yeah. Thankfully, it doesn't happen often. You could probably count them on one hand. There's literally like one or two customers a year that you get into situations where, I literally had to tell them like, hey, you're not welcome back in our shop. And then there's other customers where we keep a list. I don't know where that list is.
Yes.
Of names and numbers and kind of what the situation was to remind us. So if that customer comes back, we can ask them nicely to leave our property.
How often are you dealing with shoplifters? And do you even call the cops anymore?
Thankfully, we usually catch them red-handed because most of the shoplifters here are unfortunately the homeless that are addicted.
Yep.
And they're not very smart. They're not smart thieves, so they usually get caught.
Yep.
But it's still a pain in the ass to deal with. Like you don't want to be confrontational, right? Like
No, exactly.
you never know what they're gonna pull out either. Like they
Dude.
could have a knife on them.
I have a story for you.
Okay.
So, a guy came into the shop that I worked at, and he wanted to buy a very expensive Cannondale. You know, it was a Cannondale Gemini fancy thing way back in the day. It might have been $5,000. I'm not sure, but he paid with all cash, and he was like, you know, it was kind of sketchy looking a little bit. He bought the thing though, like lots of people, you know, they look kind of sketchy and they're just fine. That's cool. I look kind of sketchy, you know. And then a few days later, he comes back again, and it's like pretty weird. And like, I think he steals something, but I don't catch him. But I think he steals something.
This is a guy that bought the fancy bike with cash.
Yeah, exactly. And then he comes back again, like a few days later, and he's wearing a backpack, and he's looking around, and he's trying stuff on, and I'm watching him, and he leaves. And I'm like, that's pretty weird. And I walk over to where he was standing over there, and I expect to find like maybe a wrapper or something, you know, like a tag or whatever. And his backpack was there. It's like a Camelback. So I opened this backpack, and there was thousands and like freaking like, I don't know, 10, 20 grand in cash, something like that. I forget exactly, like a lot of cash, but also a metric shit ton of drugs. Like tons of like little plastic baggies, light blue colored pistols and white crystal. I don't know anything about it, but lots of bad stuff. So we call the cops. They come and they're like, okay, well, let us know if this guy comes back again. Lo and behold, he comes back again. The next day, I think.
Yeah.
We got the cop. This was when I think the police were less busy. So the cop gave us the card. We called the cop as soon as he comes in. The police station was like just around the corner downtown there. Police is there in minutes. This guy sees the cops come in and he buries his head in like a thing of jerseys so they can't see him. He spends like 5 minutes with his head in the jerseys, and the cops just like stand behind him with their arms crossed. It was pretty funny. They end up chasing this guy out in front of the building. I think he like almost gets smoked by a car. They tackle him. They take him away. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I'm by myself at the shop. It's quite late at night. It's winter, so it's dark. I'm closing up, and there's these side windows. And I'm doing my cash out. Lights are all off. And I see something move over in the side. And it's this guy. And he's standing at the window, just staring at me. And he mouths something or other. But like, my point with this story is that a lot of times we're dealing with sketchy people.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've dealt with some sketchy shit like that. Have you ever had a bike stolen on a test ride?
No, thankfully not.
Really?
No, but we had someone try to pull a bike out of her stand and take it outside, but we caught it just in time.
Man, people are crazy.
Yeah, I know.
We had somebody break into like the electrical hydro, like small little unit for our strip mall area that we were in. Yeah. And then they cut through the wall to get into the bike shop to take bikes.
Oh, wow.
Like, what the hell is wrong with people? It's
Yeah. We just got broken into actually a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Through our back door. Steel door with a steel security gate behind it. And they literally like must have pried for hours and hours trying to get in. And all they stole was a little bit of cash in the till. They didn't even take the coins, and there's more in coins than there was in cash. We also had a tip jar nearby. There was more cash in the tip jar. They never took that. And they walked past like, you know, tens of thousands of dollars worth of bikes that they didn't bother stealing. It was just a quick in and out, just cash for...
Lucky. You got lucky.
We got really lucky. Really lucky.
Yeah, I assume you have an alarm.
Yeah. Alarm went off. And that's why I think, you know, it was just a quick cash grab thing because they didn't want to hang around too long with the alarm going off.
Do you just jump out of bed and just motor over here?
Yeah, like it was a pretty rude awakening, that's for sure. And then we had to pull an all-nighter to guard the shop because, we couldn't get anybody to fix it or get any parts for the door to fix it until the following day.
Yeah.
So it made for a very long night and day, which sucked.
Small business life, eh?
Yeah.
Tricky stuff.
But I'd say we got lucky for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Um, change of direction before we wrap it up here. Let's say I bought a bike from you. I love the bike. Then I buy a carbon crank set online. I got a real good deal, Dan. I don't know how
You did.
on though.
You did.
What are you thinking when somebody brings in stuff like that?
Yeah. So what we do, so for customers that purchase bikes here and come here for repairs, they currently get 10% off. However, we are changing that for 2025. Unfortunately, we do have to raise our labor rates a little bit because of
Labor rates at a bike shop these days.
like right now we're charging $80 an hour, and it's probably going to go up to about 95. The going rate at a lot of bike shops in Vancouver seems to be $100 an hour now.
Okay. Are you guys literally sticking to that when a bike comes in and it needs a crankset put on and it takes, an hour and a half or whatever? Are you like charging $150 later?
So most stuff is flat rate,
Okay.
but our rates are based off of time. And if we have something that's like some oddball repair where we have no idea how long this is going to take us, that's when we charge by time. So yeah, so like we give perks, right? You buy a bike here, currently you get 10% off. Next year, customers will get 20% off. It goes the other way, or sorry, like if they haven't bought a bike here, it's just full price.
Yeah.
But then it goes the other way if they bring in a bike and then bring in a part that they got online.
Yeah.
For probably a major discount and want us to install it, it's labor plus 20%.
Oh, okay.
Because we're now losing, money on not being able to sell the product, and we need to make up for it somewhere. Like, we're not going to deny business.
Yeah.
Right. But it needs to make sense for us too. The only business that we've been denying is Chinese e-bikes.
For that pedal fire risk, eh? Like,
yeah.
You don't even want them in the shop, is what you're doing.
No. So we actually need to be certified to work on our own bikes. So like with Bosch, for example, and with Rose, let's just use Bosch because it's the most widely used electronic system on higher end e-bikes. They require us to do an update course every 15 months.
Is that an online thing or?
It's either online or in person. Okay. You have the option. And if we don't do the update course after 15 months, all of a sudden we're not officially a certified dealer anymore. And we don't have they restrict us from Bosch parts.
Okay.
So
like
for us,
it's a certified high-end car dealer, like they only work on those things.
Exactly. So we're certified to work on Bosch, Shimano, Brose, and high drive systems.
Okay.
As of now, maybe more in the future. Not sure. And then insurance is the biggest thing.
So you're saying you're not going to de-restrict my e-bike if I ask you to?
That's right.
Okay, fair enough.
Make it go 60.
Yeah. Insurance, though.
Insurance is the biggest thing. So that's been the biggest conversation with our insurance broker the last couple of years. It's all about e-bikes. So which brand's e-bikes do you sell? What electronics are on there? Are any of them imported directly from China? Are they imported from either distributors that are based in North America? Do you work on any of these e-bikes? And if you say yes to any of these questions, your insurance premium goes through the roof. So why would I want to pay 3 times as much for my insurance? And insurance ain't cheap. It's expensive. Why would I want to pay 3 times more just to be able to service bikes from customers that weren't there to support us in the first place, and also expose ourselves of the risk of catching on fire? Right?
Yeah, I mean, that'll make sense.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
That makes like business sense. Not
Yeah.
I have business sense, but it sounds like it makes business sense anyway. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we wrap up, 10 years from now, are you still owning Jack's Cycle?
Probably. I'd hope so.
You want? Yeah. Okay. So that was my question. Is that the goal? Is Jack's like, you don't want to sell this thing? You want to keep running?
Yeah, for sure. And it's probably going to be my retirement. And hopefully one day, maybe one of my kids will want to take it over. If not, no hard feelings. Even though there's a lot of stress associated with it, it's still my dream job. And when I get to work with stuff that I'm super excited and passionate about, it gets me through the hard times.
Dude,
there's so much.
Look at what we're doing right now. We're just talking about bikes. Like, this is my job. I'm talking about bikes. You own a bike shop.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We used to just build like shitty jumps up in the bush.
Yeah,
I know. All right, Dan. We're going to wrap this up with one last question. I know it's been challenging at times. It's been stressful at times. It's probably been very rewarding at times, I hope. But for anybody who's listening, who dreams or wants to own a bike shop in the future, what would you tell them?
Go work at a bike shop. Yeah. That's where it all starts, and work your way up.
All right, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Everybody, this has been Dan Sommers, and we're at Jack Cycle in Chilliwack, BC. It's a great little shop, and you should come check it out. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right.